Yeah, so everybody's enamored with what Miami did this last week. They're 70 points and they've got so much team speed, and they do. The 49ers aren't going to put up 70. Like, that's so rare to do for anybody. But the 49ers, I think, have not hit their stride in offense. The way that I see it is they're ranked 20th in red zone touchdown percentage. Somehow they're still scoring 30 a game. They're ranked 11th in third down percentage, still scoring 30 a game. They miss Ayuk for a week, they still score 30. Purdy doesn't play great necessarily for a week, they still score 30. So I guess my question to you is, I'm not saying the same way that the Dolphins do it because the 49ers don't have the same team speed, but do you think that the 49ers, if they're hitting their stride in offense, first of all, do you agree they're not hitting their stride and they could be putting up more points, as crazy as that sounds? And second of all, do you think that they can be almost as explosive as Miami offensively if they put everything together a little bit differently, but they could be hey, we could put up 40 every week as well. Do you think they could be that type of offense? Because I do.
You know, I mean, Miami's so interesting because, I mean, you look at that game against Denver and you think, well, they probably just aired it out. And it was 28 passes. And by the way, they were Tua and Mike White were 25 of 28. And they just did whatever they wanted. But they also ran 43 times for 8.1 a carry, 350 yards. A-Kane, had 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mostert had 3 touchdowns. I think the Dolphins score faster, where the Niners are, a little bit, I think, more unstoppable, but at the same time, they don't play as fast. They don't have as much speed. They have longer drives. It's hard to say, like, what is the top end for the 49ers offensively, because I feel like we haven't seen Purdy's best game. I'm not sure that we've seen a game yet where Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Debo are all fully healthy, but there's no guarantee you're going to see that either. It's I don't know. I'm not sure what to make, how to compare Miami and the 49ers as far as Miami's got great, all their weapons are incredibly fast. I mean, you can see they're prioritizing speed, and they had a ton of speed they've got a ton of speed in the backfield with A-Kane and Mostert, so they can run to the edges at will. They can throw it to those guys out of the backfield, and they're really dangerous. It's really more of a conversation about the 49ers. I'm not sure what to say about the 49ers offense, to be honest, Jesse, because, I mean, it's like the 49ers offense has got a lot of weapons, but, they've got some questions on their offensive line. The right side of the line has not gotten off to a great start. I don't think Purdy's played anything close to his best game. So I definitely think what is impressive about the 49ers is that you look up at the end of the game and they have 30. And I don't know how exactly they're getting there, because it's not like they're getting a bevy of turnovers either in short fields. It's not like, well, it's all their defense. No, it's not all their defense. It just seems like what they don't have is
I mean, they had a game. Well, I think it was against the Rams. I could be wrong. I think they went like 2 for 9 on third down in that game. It's like, how the hell did you score 30? Like, how's that? You know what I mean? And like I said, once they're in the red zone, it's not like they're just putting the ball in the end zone every time they reach the red zone. They're ranked 20th in the NFL in touchdown percentage in the red zone. So it's like, man, these guys are kind of, to me, it seems like playing maybe mediocre to what they could be. And that should be a scary thing for the rest of the league, because they still put up 30. Like, that's the floor. The floor might be 30. It's crazy to think about it.
They didn't run it all that efficiently against the Giants. They had 3.6 yards per carry. It's bizarre. I mean, it's I'm not sure what to say about it. I mean, they get them. One thing that it seems like is happening, and I don't have the stats to back it up, but it seems like their field position is better than their opponent. Like they don't go 3 and out that often. They typically drive the football a little bit, and then if they punt, they're burying the other team deep in their own territory. So,
I don't know what the stat is this year, Larry. I do know last year the 49ers led the league both offensively and defensively in the best starting field position in the NFL, meaning their defense started with the opposing offense with their back closest to the end zone out of anybody in the league, and then their offense started with the best field position in the whole NFL, which I thought that was kind of a crazy stat that on both sides they led the NFL. It does almost feel like maybe even this year that could be similar as well. Yeah.
It's funny. Brother Bob says Purdy's pimp keeps it 100. Brock has looked mid, yet we still love him. What's the last emoji?
He's hiding his eyes like he's waiting for your response.
Well, I mean, Brock is trustworthy and smart.
Yeah.
So that's why you like him, because even in a game last week where there's all kinds of exotics, I was watching that from the upper deck, or it feels like the upper deck. It's the 8th level of the Sky Tower in the press box. And I had it on the binoculars. And when there were free runners at the quarterback, he threw it away. And so one thing that stands out to me is that Purdy will complete almost every game roughly the exact same percentage, 67 to 68%. But of that 68%, it really doesn't tell the story. He's really more like a 75% completion percentage guy, because when there are negative plays and free runners at him, he'll throw it away. He's not missing, 33% of his passes. He's missing 25% of his passes and throwing the others away. So it's very frustrating for the defense that you don't get the big negative play with Brock Purdy at quarterback, because he doesn't give it to you. If you get a free runner at him, he throws it away. So I saw him. He probably threw away 4 or 5 balls in that Giant game, and I feel like almost every game I've watched this year, he's thrown a few away. Like he doesn't, where Jimmy might try to hold on to that or take the sack or make something happen, Brock throws it away. He gets out of the pocket, throws it away. So it's weird. He's more accurate than 67%. And I would say more than anything, if you said, what's the genius, if there is any, with Brock Purdy so far? It's not making plays. It's the avoidance of negative plays. He doesn't have huge negative plays. He doesn't turn it over. He was asked today about interceptions, and that, I think Eric Branch said, hey, it's been X number of passes since the last time you threw a pick. And he's totally cognizant of the fact that, hey,
so, I'm going to try to hold on. So what you're saying is Eric Branch jinxed him. Thanks, Eric. Way to go,
Eric
man.
Branch,
Way
Eric
to freaking go, bud.
Him. With his softball question. You haven't thrown an interception and I'm like sitting there going, well, the other day, Eric Branch asked Kyle Shanahan, if you don't get fired, you'll be here longer than Bill Walsh. And it's like, everybody looked at Branch like, really? You're going to ask a question about him eclipsing Bill Walsh and then throw a caveat if you don't get fired?
He's saying if he lives out the rest of this contract. I got you. Okay.
He'll have longer duration than Walsh. But the one thing, if you say Brock Purdy's greatest traits, his greatest traits are his competitiveness and his escapability. So he can escape, rush, and then he's very, very competitive. And like even today, I was joking with him. Sort of. I did an interview today with Brandon Allen, and I said, Brandon, what do you do when you're not playing football? Just a kind of a throwaway question in the locker room. I go, what's your thing? Some guys like going to movies, some guys like to cook, some guys, whatever. He goes, it's golf. He goes, I love to play golf. And he goes, me and Sam play. I go, do you ever drag Brock out there? And he's like, no, he doesn't really play. He doesn't really play. So then we had a chance to talk to Brock, and I'm like, hey, Brandon Allen claims he's the best golfer on the team, and that he would take your money if he ever got you out there on the course, but that you don't really play. And Brock's like, yeah, well, I go, you're from Arizona. how could you not play golf? And anytime I even go to Arizona, that's all I do is play golf. And he started laughing. He's like, well, my dad would play when I was a kid, and I'd go fishing in the little ponds there on the golf course instead of playing. But then he goes, but I'll be working on my game, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to beat him. It's like, so Brock's got this, he's got a very, very competitive streak in him. So to me, those are the traits. It's the competitive streak, which helps him elevate from time to time, and the escapability. Everything else is kind of, there's more accurate, there's bigger arm guys, there's faster guys, but as far as competitive and escapability, I think he's top level. And maybe that's what kind of compensates for some of his weaknesses, is that he's really, really competitive.
About the way that we both kind of view Brock early this season is, and it wasn't my post game because I was at the Pittsburgh Steelers game. I think I threw out a tweet like first thing Monday morning after the game, and then I was watching you later in the week, and you said something very, very similar, where it's like we spent so much time this offseason talking about upside that we forgot, and it was mostly all of us forgot to say, okay, that's true. Yes, there are guys with more upside. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But their quarterback play in the NFL is not the best. There's a lot of guys with a much lower floor as well. And the one thing that we can say about Brock, if anything, is he's about as consistent as you can be. To your point, you pretty much know, barring a one game one way or the other. Like last week, it was 300 something yards. The week before, it was 0 touchdowns, where it's like, okay, the low is 0 touchdowns and 220 yards. The high is 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. But most weeks, you can almost say, all right, I know that I'm going to get out of Brock Purdy 67% completion. Probably not going to have any turnovers. Probably going to have 2 touchdowns and 210 yards passing. And if nothing else, that is enough, because what they didn't get from Jimmy Garoppolo ever was the consistency. You never knew who was going to show up to those games. Is he going to throw it to the other team 4 times this week? Is he going to throw for 350 and 3 touchdowns and look immaculate? Like, there was no consistency with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think for Kyle, that's all he's ever wanted. Like, just give me somebody that I know what they're bringing to the table week in and week out. And sure, maybe 2 weeks out of the year, it's 210 yards, no turnovers, and no touchdowns. Maybe 2 weeks out of the year, it's 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. But for the most part, like, this is what I'm going to get. And as long as I know that and I can just pencil that in, I can work around that every single week. And that's what Brock Purdy brings. So, yes, there are guys that are better than Brock, but there are also a lot worse than Brock. And that's kind of what we're starting to see at this stage in his career, where he's at. And I think that floor conversation didn't happen enough this offseason.
Well, hey, it's funny. We talk about Jimmy, like, what's Jimmy's greatest thing? It was his resiliency, but he would create the adversity.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
He was resilient. He bounced back. Yeah. From adversity that he created.
Right.
And then also, let's be honest. I mean, we're all this is kind of not just a Niner fan thing or a football thing. It's like sports fans. It's like, we're all kind of get ourselves caught on dreaming on the upside, and we don't really talk about the floor, and my kid was asking me last Friday, Jesse. I took my kid to lunch, and he's like, Dad, it was a great game last night. And we were talking about the game because I was at the game. So I like to watch with my 14-year-old, and he had to watch it by himself. So now Friday, I'm getting a chance to talk to him about it for the first time. And I'm like, what'd you think of the game? He's like, well, Brock looked really good, and the offense looked good. And, they blitzed him a ton, but he handled it. So he's giving me his analysis. And then he said, Dad, where would you actually rank Brock? And then I started thinking, well, how would I, what rankings? I mean, rankings, how are we going to do it? So I started thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, this is the only way I can, and then I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, how many quarterbacks in the league do you think Brock's better than? And I'm like, well, man, then we have to define better than.
Yeah, what's better? Yeah.
And so so we were driving around. We went to Subway, had a sandwich, and I said, okay, this is how I'll define better. Is if they announced that Brock was being traded for Patrick Mahomes. If Patrick Mahomes is better, then I'm going to be like, yes. If Patrick Mahomes is worse or not as good, then I'm going to be like, really?
Yeah.
So that's how I define better. Like quarterbacks that I would be excited about if they traded Brock straight up for, then those guys are better. Quarterbacks that I would be disappointed that they traded Brock for that quarterback, then those guys are worse. So this is what I came up with, the list.
And then there's going to be some, though, that are going to be like why? Well, because it's basically the same.
Yeah, I mean, okay, and then I said, well, you got to factor in age. Like, Aaron Rodgers is better. I'm not an idiot. Is Aaron Rodgers better than Brock Purdy? Yeah. Aaron Rodgers is better than Brock Purdy.
He's coming off a major injury. He's expensive and he's old.
Right. He's 39. He makes 40-something million or whatever he makes, and he's got an Achilles tear. So if they traded tomorrow Brock Purdy for Aaron Rodgers, would Niner fans be rejoicing? No, they'd be like pissed.
Be happy, no.
They'd be pissed. So this is the list I came up with of guys that are better. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, man, I mean, some of those guys, I still think Brock, I still wouldn't be thrilled if they traded Brock for. Like, Lamar hasn't had a very good couple of years, but he did win the MVP, and he's so damn courageous and athletic and smart and everything. And then like Trevor Lawrence is still a little bit of a projection. And then, of course, I bet the Jags on Sunday, and Trevor Lawrence looked like S against the Texans. And then I'm like, well, do I really want to put Trevor Lawrence over him? So then a buddy of mine did the
Trevor
same.
Lawrence thing's interesting because a lot of people are but a lot of people are just dropping passes or can't keep their freaking feet in bounds. Like, it's incredible. You go watch that game. Those receivers have no awareness. He's dropping dimes, and these guys are like, oh, can't keep my feet in. Oh, I'm dropping passes. It's weird. It's a lot. But anyways, go ahead.
The other one's Herbert, which is like Herbert his team doesn't win, but he is kind of like the prototype. And I really, and I would be excited if they got Herbert, because Herbert with these weapons and Kyle's offense, with this defense, I mean, so the guys who I had on the list that I think, what about Stafford? But then Stafford makes $40 million and he's 35 years old. So no. What about Russell? He's a Hall of Famer. Yeah, but he makes a ton of money. He's not playing all that great, and he's kind of old. What about Kirk Cousins? He's probably had a better career to date, but he makes a ton of money, and he's 35. What about Rodgers? We already discussed that one. What about Jared Goff? And I just like Purdy more than Goff, even though Goff's 28. He makes money, but he doesn't make obscene money. He makes 33. What about Dak? I'd rather have Purdy. What about the one that my kid came up with? What about Tua? And I'm like, well, Tua's driving a sports car and he looks awesome, but he's had hip problems. He's not old and he doesn't make a lot of money, but I just would rather have Purdy than Tua. And then the one that's also very difficult is Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson makes a lot of money. He's not old, but he completes like
he is anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know what he is anymore. He's not the same. He's clearly not the same guy. At least not now the same guy. It's like, yeah, we know he was a top 5 quarterback, but I mean, the league humbles you very quickly. You can't just sit out multiple years, switch teams, and expect to be every bit as good. And we're seeing that right now with him. So,
and his decision making has been very iffy. He's completing 55% of his passes. Yep. And he's not old, but he does make $46 million a year. Mm-hmm. So that's the list. So I guess, kid, I would have Purdy as the 8th best quarterback in football right now. Another buddy of mine said, I like your list. I'd take off Lawrence and I would add Tua. I'm like, all right, whatever. So we both had him around 8. 8 is a sure lot higher than what any of us were saying at the beginning of the year. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but that's how I feel in the moment. And it's all subject to, we'll see. We'll see. But
I don't, it's interesting. The way that you're doing it, I don't have a lot of pushback against. I don't know if that's how I would define who's better. Like,
Right.
if it's like, hey, I got to go win a Super Bowl this year with the 49ers. Money aside, who am I just taking in a vacuum? What players am I taking? I'm probably not going to have Purdy. And I know for a fact I'm not going to have Purdy at 8. But if it's like, okay, now I'm factoring money, now I'm factoring age, now of course I'm getting, like Purdy over a lot of those guys. Yes, that makes total sense. I mean, Purdy at 900K. I mean, Purdy at 900K, that's a whole different ball game because that is
you
a
can have,
big difference maker. You know what I mean? So that's it. Like I said, I don't have an argument necessarily to say if that's how we're judging it, 8, I can see that. But just in a vacuum, I can take this player or this player and put them on the 49ers money aside. I wouldn't have Purdy in the top 8.